The MCU, what a time it was to just view 2 to 3 films each year, enjoying most, hoping to see it all pays off in the end. But just like most accomplishments in this industry, it'll eventually fall into a pit of rubble. With over 30 films excluding shows, the MCU is on a decline, with all the controversy and pulling strings of old to make money, feeling like Mr. Krabs just took over this entire franchise.
Hello, I like money.
MCU has become a shell of its former self. I'm at a point where, even myself, I'm done with this entire universe. A very straightforward storytelling of many characters and their stories falling in place for a bigger goal. That's what it was like in the Thanos era. Now when we go post-Thanos era, it feels like a slop being mixed in a pan, with ingredients that make no sense creating, well, crap. But why should I talk about a corpse that hasn't been put to rest instead of look back at the desperate studio needing to make a creative decision to fabricate a universe which will literally change Hollywood for the foreseeable future?
I wouldn't call it a comfort.
The late 90s Marvel was at their lowest. A lot of their old IPs never turned out to be big profit, and DC was ahead of the game whether it was animation or live action. They were very low to the point they had to sell several of their IPs like Spider-Man to Sony, X-Men to Fox. Now the tables have turned now. They need some way to turn in a profit, because they simply couldn't keep up. Despite the Raimi film's success, it didn't save Marvel entirely. Sure, it gave them more recognition, which did them huge favors for Iron Man and Hulk, but they were way behind by their competitors, as Nolan was just simply busy revolutionizing the comic industry. November 2005, Marvel needed a hard reset. They needed a character they haven't depicted in live action yet, and someone who hasn't sold yet to another massive company. Iron Man. Iron Man was a second-tier character for Marvel. He wasn't X-Men, he wasn't Spider-Man or even Hulk, but he was someone who hasn't been on the big screen yet, and Marvel needed a swing to try and innovate themselves. $140 million thrown towards Jon Favreau and his team. The MCU was set in stone. Trying to save your ass as a studio, and you start possibly the biggest achievement in history with no script? We all know having no script isn't the right path. Michael Bay will definitely like to tell you why.
What are we gonna do with this shrimp taco?
Just bump a cap in his ass, don't.
Never mind, I think Revenge of the Fallen is just a good example why you need a script. Jeff Bridges in an interview revealed Iron Man was filmed with no paper to read off of. They had the outline on important scenes, but when it comes to prior to filming, there was no script in place. The team constantly were changing lines before they went into shoot, but at a certain point when this very paper was given to the heads, Marvel themselves weren't happy with the changes and launched the script out of a cannon. The actors and Favreau, all they had to work with each day was an outline. With the addition, thankfully, of talented actors, they were able to practice in their trailers going over lines and use improv to make a scene work, which surprisingly worked best for this film because their personalities really stood out, allowing for better chemistry on set and being themselves, especially RDJ, who pretty much played himself and was sort of molded into this Tony Stark character, a role that even turned his life around as he had a rough history before joining the MCU. Won't be going into much detail as there's already countless videos on his life prior to Iron Man. Iron Man had to be one of the most luckiest films when you look at it from a distance because it wasn't a big franchise, it's a tier 2 character, it's like a bunch of kids giving money to make a movie. A student film as Jeff Bridges called it. There was a lot to lose, I mean it's $140 million fucking dollars. And being the last saving grace for Marvel at the time, they made this second tier character carved into this precious stone that you had an entire theater in disbelief when Thanos gotcha stabbed Iron Man. Man, I love film. Watching Iron Man, hell even Civil War when I covered the film a year ago, Iron Man's bulky brute practical suit felt more unique and mechanical, which was satisfying to see all the parts coming together to form this figure which looks cool. Yeah, cool. I know for story purposes, it's smart for Tony to innovate his suit to be more convenient during a fight. He'd be an idiot if he doesn't use nanotech. It proved to be an advantage for him against Thanos.
All that for a drop of blood.
But the reason I love this suit or the concept of the original designs for Iron Man was how much practical effects they use. It felt real and robust. The team desperately tried to use practical effects wherever they can to avoid budget costs on CGI, but certain discrepancies with RDJ finding it difficult to move around in the practically made suit. So they either had scenes where he wore a full mocap suit or half, sometimes 3/4. But clearly they use CGI very wisely in this film, where you can't tell what looks existing and what doesn't. Jon Favreau was very fortunate enough to work closely with Stan Winston Studios, who are very notorious for their special effects with films like Terminator, Predator, and the Jurassic Park series. With the idea of it being treated as a student film, that sort of mentality, a lot of them were simply enjoying the vibe. No idea that 10 years later they will be part of a film which made the highest box office return. Until a re-release of Avatar completely fucking destroyed it. I've mentioned this quite a few times in previous videos, but we were in a time when CGI hasn't fully evolved to the juggernaut it is right now. Many studios had to save CGI budget for much needed parts of a film where it's almost physically impossible to use practical elements, like Michael Bay with the Transformers franchise or Nolan with the Dark Knight trilogy. These directors, even to this day, exemplify why many still love watching their films. Sure, their stories might be absolutely garbage, but it's the visual technical story that they tell on the screen which allows for people to have their butts in their seats. This is why many enjoy the set pieces they create, as they are always innovating in new ways for the film industry. As for Favreau, currently he clearly lost the magic he had with Iron Man as he fell into the pool of Disney, unfortunately. Now that I've boasted about the technical aspect of the film, does the plot even hold up? Short answer, yes. Iron Man clearly doesn't have an overly complex storyline. You could say they played it safe with their story since they didn't really innovate a bunch of stuff in the universe they're about to make, confusing the audience and tuning themselves out for Iron Man's story, which a lot of the new slop comic book films like to do, deviating away from the main focal point of your film and making me, in my own opinion, care fucking less about what's being bestowed. Iron Man, however, gives Tony Stark his own faults, a personality which pretty much is RDJ. But how does Tony grow from his faults, and what obstacles lie ahead of him from achieving his goal? Tony at the start of the film acting like a cool guy, making himself look like the big deal, doesn't attend important events on time, or he's sleeping with reporters. Man, Marvel was different back then. Stark Industries having many sectors they focus on, weapons where most of their money is made, so when Tony is doing his presentation in the Middle East with the Jericho missile, showing it all off, that can kill thousands of people with one boom. Taking drinks in celebration for the work he has done. Ironically, the very weapons he created ends up blowing up in his face, putting himself in a vulnerable position. Yinsen, who plays a huge role in Tony's life, saves him by linking a car battery to create an electromagnet to prevent the shrapnel from reaching his heart. Yinsen is really talked about enough when talking about the entirety of the MCU. Without him, Tony would be dead. Tony would have likely never escaped, forced to make the Jericho missile and do unrepairable damage to the world. But this was a very nice turning point in Tony's life, where he sees the truth behind the weapons of war and how much his work is harmful than good, if it was ever landed into the wrong hands. Using the materials given by the 10 rings, Iron Man constructs his first suit, Mark I. Using this very suit, he breaks himself after Yinsen's sacrifice, buying Tony some time. He calls for a press conference and announces he's shutting down the entire weapons sector of Stark Industries. Now this is Obadiah, yes, played by Jeff Bridges, and yes, he's a corrupt billionaire who wants all the profits and Stark Industries has full control. That's why he gave the hit on Tony Stark. Obadiah, seeing a new arc reactor as something new to pitch to the board, make him more dough, and begs Tony to constantly to give it to him and analyze it, but Tony isn't persistent on pushing it.
Let me have the engineers analyze that. Draw up some spec.
But Tony Stark, despite shutting down the weapons production, gets exposed of his own company double-dealing, providing 10 rings with his own weapons against civilians in Gualama. I think I said that right. This upsets Tony as he infiltrates the group, wrecking the 10 rings plans and the weapons which were provided under his radar. Tony really is a changed man. Before he was all show and drinks, women, and cars. He had a corrupt business mindset before the whole boom fiasco he went through, which was later revealed to be an orchestrated attack by Obadiah, who ordered the 10 rings to massacre the entire convoy, including Tony Stark. Seeing through the lies of his own company, he goes and enters a new journey of using his science for good, and not war, keeping the art reactor with himself, which pisses off Obadiah, who takes matters into his own hands, creating Ironmonger and butts heads with Tony. But without testing and maintenance, Tony was able to outsmart Obadiah with the ice maneuver, putting himself in a very vulnerable situation with many limitations, such as a target lock system being his downfall at the end of it. Tony ventures off in a new journey of being Iron Man in public and kickstarting a 10-year run of cinema excellence of the Thanos era.
I am Iron Man.
Sometimes I wonder will we ever get back to that type of ingenuity of what Iron Man, First Avenger, even Thor accomplished? A desperate company trying to make their way into the mainstream seems to make the best work. Now with over $5 billion of success with all these films now, Marvel just doesn't give a shit it seems. Even with the higher tier characters, nothing's coming out of profit. Now Marvel, Favreau and his team, with all the movie magic they had at the time, with practical stunts and effects and a safe story, but with the idea of having fun on set with talented actors who were able to craft something truly mechanically magical. So no, I don't think we'll ever get back to the inventiveness of Iron Man given how Hollywood is striving to push for AI, which seems to be the case as some industries have been testing AI scripts. We are in the dark times, fellas. It won't be long till iRobot comes into real life. I will always vision Iron Man as the best origin to a character in the MCU. Although Thor and Captain America had their ideas and eye candy looks with practical effects, none came across the development of Tony Stark and the story surrounding this tier 2 character becoming the face of Marvel. The movie deserves every high praise it gets, and yeah, that's it from me, so yeah, see you on the next one.